Yes, but everybody's so excited about having Descanso Gardens. It's
Well,
a great opportunity.
this is I think this is a fun way for us to do this presentation, to have several people talking about native plants from different, from their different perspectives, bringing their own section of the talk. So
Sure.
yeah.
And can you please educate me and tell me if there's different varieties of oak trees, or is there only one? How many, approximately how many trees are there in the gardens, or which it be infinite, but
Oak trees, I think it's, I don't think I'm wrong to say it's a 4-figure number. For some reason, 1,200 is sticking out in my head. Majority of them are coast live oaks, Quercus agrifolia.
thank you.
At Descanso, we have 15 native oaks, and then a smaller figure for the non-native oaks.
Okay, so that will be 1,200 approximately. And how many natives did you say? I'm sorry.
15. Sorry, no. I apologize. 11.
Oh yes, how many?
11 native.
11 native. Thank you. Right. Wildlife. Who is in charge of wildlife?
I'm in charge of wildlife.
So Deborah, birds.
Well, I mean, there are too many to count. Okay, let's put it that way. But basically what I'm going to talk about today are the aquatic birds, okay, the birds that live and migrate to our gardens in order to take advantage of the streams and the pond and the lake. I'll do a little bit with turtles and lizards. I'll do something with squirrels, of course, because they're my favorite always. And then we have the Canada geese that are visiting us right now. So I'll do the Canada geese, and I'll end with our deer.
Deer. Where do the Canada geese come from?
Well, we would like to think they're actually coming from Canada, okay, because they are Canada geese, okay, but we have no way of knowing because they're not tagged or tracked.
Sure.
They do come every year. And from the research that we've been able to do, we do understand that the Canada geese do go back to their previous nesting places each year. So again, we can't be absolutely sure they come from across the border, but we'd like to think that.
That's great. All right, we're a few minutes away. Well, I try to get some key information before, so that, for the drawing opportunities, I like to ask different questions about the topic. And so some of our community members already anticipate that and have pen and paper in hand before we start.
So is it like a
They
quiz
take
you
notes.
give them?
They take notes, yes.
Really?
And then,
Wow.
which is great, because that's the purpose, right?
Right.
To get informed, to learn, and to pass it down.
Oh my gosh, okay. It's a way to keep them active during the presentation too, so that's good.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yes. And they do it for the prizes as well. We keep them interested. So
what kind of prizes do you offer?
Well, we have bottles of wine. Sometimes we have, we get creative with, depending on what the topic would be, like, having a picnic outdoors. We encourage everybody to go outdoors, and if you're going to have lunch outdoors, you bring your bottle of wine under a tree. That kind of goes with the theme. Also, last time we had, I believe, a garden master came to give us a presentation as well, and it was a vegetable garden startup.
Oh,
So
nice.
we
Wow.
had Ace donating, all kinds of like a bucket with it was a bag of soil and then seeds for vegetables, and we had a whole theme going for the
Oh, that's a great idea. That's great.
Yes. So that's why I was asking Emmy if Descanso was going to be donating anything, stickers, anything.
Probably have some oak trees.
Yes, that would be great.
Talking about for the raffle, Davis, what they raffle off.
Oh,
Oak tree probably would have been a good thing.
I think I could find, I have a couple back there.
Anything that goes with the theme would be great. Emmy, or any of you, what is the price for membership?
Oh, that would be Emmy's department.
Well, we have a variety of membership options. It starts at, for an individual, $70.
70.
And then there's also dual memberships, family plus, and then on up. So
Individuals.
there's a variety. Yeah. A dual is $80 a year, or senior dual is $75 a year.
Ooh,
And then there's additional levels available as well that have additional benefits and more people that you can bring with you.
right.
Mhm.
Then I'm going to offer one individual, and I'll come by and pick it up from you.
Oh, how nice. Okay.
Wow, yeah, that's great.
And the dual for seniors, so it's for a couple of seniors, correct?
That's right.
And that's 75.
That's right.
Okay, I'll pick one of those two.
I see Claudia Forbes.
Yep.
I know. Look at a familiar name.
Almost 2 more minutes. We're going to let everybody in.
Okay. Hey, Claudia.
Hello, Claudia.
Hi. I got the dirt out from under my fingernails from this morning.
Ah,
I got some work to do.
How are you, Claudia?
I'm good,
How are
thank you.
Claudia? You're good? Oh, great. Thank you for joining. Can you hear me well?
Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Claudia, would you be so kind to, on the chat, share your email address with me?
You know, I'm kind of a computer idiot and I'm on a tablet and I don't know
No. Okay,
how
no worries.
to find.
Underneath, there is a menu.
Yeah.
And if you click on the one little item that says chat,
Yeah, I see it here.
yeah, if you click on it, that will give you the opportunity to your right-hand side
There it is.
to see any, oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yay.
Good. Good job.
You have no idea how much trouble I have with computer stuff and Zoom, so, and
Stop making all that noise.
Claudia. You did great. All right. So everybody knows we are going to be having a recorded event so that we can place it on social media afterwards. All right, so it is 2:02. We are going to have a soft start. And I am going to introduce the Descanso Gardens Horticulture Team. And first off, I would like to start by saying thank you so much to Jennifer Errico, our public relations and marketing manager from Descanso Gardens, for referring us to Emi Yoshimura, the educational programs director for the gardens, and for having all of you here today. We are very excited for this amazing presentation. I think we've been trying since last year to get Descanso Gardens, but those gardens don't look that beautiful for anything. They are BCBs. So we are excited. Emi, nice seeing you here today. Can you give us a soft intro of who are here with you today from the gardens?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you. Thank you so much for having us. We're really happy to be here today to talk about Descanso. My name is Emi Yoshimura, and I'm the Director of Education at Descanso. And as you'll see, we have 3 of my teammates that are going to be talking with you today: Davis Bear, Layla Valenzuela, and Deborah Charlie Bartel. We're all excited to share Descanso. Probably many of you have been there and know that Descanso is known for many of its botanical collections, including roses and camellias, and our seasonal displays like our tulips and cherry blossoms that are really in bloom right now. But also so important to Descanso are its oak trees and its California native garden. So we're excited to share about those collections today specifically. Davis is going to start by talking about our oak trees and oaks in general. Layla is going to talk about our California native garden at Descanso and some of the history and some of the changes. And then we always think about how Descanso is a habitat, and there are many living things at Descanso. So Deborah is going to wrap it up for us by sharing some of the wildlife that is at the California native garden at Descanso and in other areas of the garden as well. And so with that, I think we're going to have Davis go first, and I'll invite him to go ahead and share his screen and get us started. Dan Davis is one of our horticulture team. He's going to talk a little bit, I think, about his background as well.
Welcome.
Hi. As Amy said before, my name's Davis Bear. I'm a gardener here at Descanso, and I've had the opportunity to help propagate the coast live oaks at Descanso, which are the main canopy tree that surrounds the garden. And yeah, I'll just go ahead and start sharing my screen.
Fantastic.
Cool. I think everything's in order. So yes, the coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia, for those of you who know the scientific name. And so yeah, okay, first start with the introduction about me. I am from Charleston, South Carolina, the suburb of Mount Pleasant, right outside, across the bridge there, you can see. I lived right down there.
Beautiful place.
Graduated from Auburn University in 2019, and I studied horticulture and business. So I am following my career path and what I studied. And I moved to California after graduating and began working at Descanso in November. I got an interview with David Bear. Yes, I said that correctly. David Bear, same last name, no relation, kind of odd, but still very familiar, so it felt nice. And then just a little fun thing about me, some of my favorite plants include the coast live and southern live oaks. The southern magnolia, which I was glad to see, is all over Los Angeles, as well as some azaleas, crepe myrtles, and Japanese maples.
That's fantastic.
So this tree right here is
Davis, if my husband would be here, he would be so excited because Charleston is where he did his first training before going into the military.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So
the
he
naval
loves
base?
Charleston.
Oh, okay, that's so interesting. Yeah, a lot of people I think end up traveling through Charleston for military reasons.
Yes.
So this is Angel Oak, and this is kind of one of the when I think of home and the oaks at home, this is one of the first things I think of. And so I sort of had an unconventional path to horticulture. My parents helped me develop the strong appreciation for the landscape and plants and nature, especially. We visited parks, gardens, and did other outdoor activities such as go to the beach and ride out on the boat and stuff like that. So always exploring the outdoors. But as I grew up, I was way more interested in architecture, and that appreciation for nature also grew. But I never saw horticulture as a career until much later in my young adult life. Next, so at my time at Auburn. Oh, well, first, sorry, let me go back and talk about Angel Oak. So yeah, this monster of a tree is almost it's been approximated 300 to 400 years old, measuring 66 feet tall. But the crown spread, which is really what's amazing about it, is almost 200 feet wide from tip to tip. So it's just, you're there and it completely consumes your vision. You are only looking at the tree. And it's Quercus virginiana, which is native to the East Coast. And I can see a little fact at the bottom that the shade covers 17,200 square feet. So these are the oaks and tumors corner in Auburn, Alabama, where I went to school. And this is kind of a sad story, but I think it had a profound effect on me. These oaks were poisoned and had to be taken down right before I started attending Auburn. And it kind of hurt that I wasn't going to be able to form a relationship with these trees that so many other alumni and other students had just always been talking about. And I just really had this hole in my heart. It felt like that I wouldn't get that opportunity. And I mean, they're a part of everyone's life. Everyone has a story with them, sharing good news or bad news. The oaks are always there to witness. And I was really taught the value of a tree and of plants in general, and just the powerful emotional connections that people can form with them. And as I said, I was interested in architecture. So when I arrived at Auburn, that's what I was studying. But the semester following, with the help of some coursework that wasn't really my fit, architecture classes. So I changed majors to horticulture and took a particular interest in trees, especially oak trees. And so when I arrived at Descanso, I was immediately felt welcomed by the oaks that, the gnarled branches, widespread, almost feeling like they would hug me, bring me in. And the anxiety of moving across the country to a new home, starting a new life, subsided almost immediately at the sight of a familiar friend. So the coast live oak is what I'm here to talk to you all about today. Before I get into the coast live oak, we've got to understand the oak genus and its relationship to other plants. It's in the beech family, and the other trees in the beech family are the beeches, of course, as well as the oaks and chestnuts. And this chart right here is the classification of living things. So I mentioned that the beech family, right underneath that is the genus, and that word genus you would use that word. It describes kind of the oak group. And so, yeah, the genus is comprised of over 500 species around the world. And North America contains the largest number of oak species. 90 of those are in the United States, and 160 of them are in Mexico. The second greatest center of diversity is in China, or greatest center of oak diversity is in China. And then, you can see here the genus is further subdivided, as many large genera are, into Lepidopalamus, Mesobalamus, Protobalamus, and Erythrobalamus. And then, yes, there are other oaks in Europe, in North Africa, as well as the Americas and Asia. So yes, characteristics of Quercus. All oaks have distinctive wind-pollinated flowers. They're monoecious, meaning the male and female flowers are on the same plant, as opposed to dioecious, where you have a male and a female plant, like the ginkgo, which you may be familiar with. But anyways, the female flower produces the acorns and the male flower produces pollens, and those are known as catkins. The fruit, as many people are familiar with, and as I am especially familiar with, is the acorn. The acorn is made up of 3 parts: the hull, which protects the seed from external environment, be it predators or climate conditions. The seed and embryo, that's what's inside the hull and what is actually growing the root and the shoot. And then the cap, which connects the acorn to the tree and helps give nutrition to the acorn, so that when it falls off, it can grow and hold on its own until it's able to develop roots.
So Davis, the female is the acorn. And what do you call the male?
Catkins.
Oh, catkins.
Yes, produces pollen. Complex wood, which I can get more information about. I'm not entirely super familiar with the wood and the structure of wood, but you have softwood and hardwood, and part of the wood helps with its ability to, the structure of the wood helps with its ability to live for many, many, many decades, as well as strong support for the leaf canopy. And at the bottom there, yes, develop a resistance to wind, drought, fire, insects, and disease. So the native oaks and oaks at Descanso. Of the 90 species in North America, 20 of them are native to California, and of those 20, we have 11 at Descanso. The main oak here is Quercus agrifolia. And as we learn more about the California native oaks and the contributions they continue to make, we start to recognize their value aesthetically, economically, scientifically, and ecologically. And just want to dive a bit into those. Aesthetics, I think, is a big one. It kind of, especially at Descanso, you feel like you're at Descanso just by seeing and being surrounded by the oaks. And it adds so much to the landscape and is a beautiful specimen tree. And for those of you that don't know, a specimen tree is just a tree that is planted standalone and is a focus of attention. And it can stand alone and be rather interesting. Economic value, acorns were a food source for many Native American tribes, as well as the wood and other parts of the plant were used by colonists as for a variety of industries, construction, building boats, all sorts of things. And then scientific value. This tree is used a lot for erosion control, as well as, I believe, climate control, planted in cities to reduce temperatures and that sort of thing, as well as the study of the adaptations and tolerances that I mentioned earlier. Disease and drought and heat are two of the big ones that we study out here in Los Angeles. Oh, yes, so the ecological, I almost forgot. This is a very important one because the ecological value is arguably one of the most important. The research suggests it's a keystone species. And so if you think about a keystone of an arch, if you remove the keystone, everything else collapses with it. So that's kind of what they're comparing the oak tree to. That if the oak tree were ever removed from the ecosystem, odds are the rest of it would crumble just because of what the oak tree provides for all the other animals and organisms like bacteria, viruses, squirrels, birds, and insects. And yes, they influence the way landscapes operate.
And I hear that the Tongva tribe benefited so much from them as well.
Yes, I think there are over 10 tribes in Southern California, maybe just Western United States. I'm not quite sure, but a lot of tribes benefited from this tree and the acorns that it produces. So the accelerated destruction in recent years has led to statewide preservation efforts, and in using data and observations that we learn to suggest new laws and policies. So this is the coast live oak. It's in the rose garden. It's two next to each other. Here's the trunk right here, but it's spreading about right here. And so the appearance is a low evergreen tree, and low is kind of maybe not an appropriate word because it's 66 feet tall, so it's a big tree. But as far as like your sycamore or your redwood goes, it won't get as tall as that, but it will get that wide. About like I said earlier. Sorry, this is a different tree, but it's like the my coast live oak, Quercus virginiana, and it's very similar in that it spreads wider than it grows tall. And yes, a hemispherical crown supported by a single or multi-branched trunk. The lineage is a red or black oak, Erythrobalanus, and longevity can commonly live for 125 to 250 years old. And I think we have some specimens here. Our heritage oaks are pushing 300 years old. And the habitats are valleys, slopes, coastal plains, rocky hillsides, along streams, mixed evergreen forests, and woodlands, similar to what we have at Descanso, a woodland. And then the distributions within a 50-mile corridor from Sonoma County to Baja, California. So a very long stretch, but not too long, can't go too far in. For the dimensions, yes, commonly 40 to 7 feet tall. The crown can spread up to 130 feet wide, and trunks can be 8 to 12 feet across. That is very big. I don't know if we have any 8 to 12 feet oaks here, but I know there are some in the area, I believe. The foliage is dark green, convex or cupped. Oval-shaped leaves are 1 to 3 inches long with tough, leathery texture and spiny margins. These trees have two different types of leaves, if you will. They have the top leaves are thinner with multiple layers of photosynthetic cells. This is so when it gets in the peak of the summer months, the heat is not as bad on them because the surface area of the leaf is smaller, but those photosynthetic cells are in layers, and so the heat will penetrate further down, as opposed to the bottom leaves, or the leaves at the bottom of the canopy are wider and have a larger surface area, but not as many layers of photosynthetic cells because they are there to catch the rest of the light that filters through the canopy. The bark is light to dark gray, generally smooth, developing cracks and fissures. Acorns are brown, narrow, or cone-shaped. They're pretty small, but yeah, 3/4 to 1 3/4 inches long. So let's see, make sure I did not. The landscape at Descanso is ever changing, but one thing has remained constant throughout the years since the days of Bodie, that's the oaks. With new and exciting changes on the horizon, such as our master plan, as well as the challenges that we face, such as climate change, we're going to be more dedicated to the preservation of the oaks that have provided so much for us and other organisms around us. So what we are doing at Descanso, and also I think as just a people in general in Los Angeles, we are doing the research, learning more about our oaks, our environment, and the relationship between the two, and how the two can live symbiotically together. Adhering to county guidelines, I believe these have been passed in the last 20 years, standards for maintenance, protection, evaluation, and safety to ensure best oak management practices. Maintenance, we're working on irrigation is a big one. We're finding out that some of the plants that we've planted next to the oaks don't agree as far as watering schedules go in the summer. So we're working on that, as well as continuing to do tree work and pest management and just general cleaning around the trees. Oftentimes pest and disease will harbor over, could go into dormancy and dead decaying leaves around the tree, or sometimes they fall in hollows in the tree that insects make, and just cleaning all that stuff out to help preserve the oaks. And then species regeneration, and this is what I've had my hand in. propagating live oaks from seed to introduce to the landscape and rebuild. And no pun intended, but yes, there's my hand. And that is one of the oak seedlings that I've been propagating. And so let's see. The first step in all of this for me, because I am familiar with oaks, but I was not super familiar with the coast live oak until a couple months ago. So I had to do some research about the plant. But there are kind of other four main topics were propagation methods, collection methods, viability testing, and conditions for germination.
And Davis, do you find it that propagating this kind of oak is different from the others, or is there a similar?
You know, I don't have a ton of experience propagating, but in school we did learn about how many oaks do have specific requirements to induce germination. For instance, I think some need to be shaved down so they're able to actually break out of the acorn, as well as cooling conditions, and I know most of them can't be frozen. Some require drying, but as far as, you know, compared to the other oaks, these were rather easy. You just got them off the tree and planted them, and I had to store them for a little bit in cool conditions. That's because I was a little bit afraid of, well, one, I stored them in the refrigerator because of the pests. Squirrels really like acorns. And then, yes, to keep the conditions, or to keep their environment cool, I stored them in the refrigerator. But so yes, propagation methods. The method of choice was seed propagation. And I think the main reason for that was because the acorns are an abundant resource here at Descanso. And it didn't seem necessary to go purchase any plants or any seed because we already have a plentiful amount here. But another thing that was mentioned was transplanting seedlings that are already growing in the ground. And well, we didn't have a lot of success transplanting. Odds are the taproot would get damaged or broken, and usually from there it's kind of a death sentence. Usually not a lot of trees will survive after a broken taproot. But the other thing was that if you grow them from seed in these containers, we get to choose the whole where we fill that tree in. So other oaks that just fall, or sorry, acorns that fall on the ground and start to germinate and grow, maybe right next to another oak or a redwood or a structure of some sort, that if we were to allow that tree to keep growing, it would, odds are, cause problems, or maybe not grow up to be as healthy as something here that we can place into the ground and have a little bit more control over. So
when it comes down to the leaves, because we've noticed around Southern California that they shed a lot of leaves, would those leaves be good to use as a mulch for California native gardens?
yeah, I see no problem with it. It's a little risky, just in that I was mentioning insects and disease really prefer like that decaying organic matter to live in. But if that's not a concern, because like I said, they have a lot of resistance. So if that's not a concern, then yeah, odds are it's fine. We don't get to every oak tree at Descanso to rake up. So I think it's fine. It's not a huge issue.
Okay, thank you.
So next is collection. So the first thing we learned was that the local fruit are adapted to the environment. And so that meaning that the acorns produced by the trees at Descanso kind of have already been introduced to the climate through their parent tree, and are kind of have adapted conditions. The fruit are considered ripe when the nut separates from the cap. And this is important because you can't just go and, well, let me start over, sorry. Let's see. We wanted to collect directly from the tree, because if you collect anything off the ground, there's a higher likelihood that they have been damaged by pests or insects. And so we wanted to collect it directly from the tree. So to do this, we set up a ladder and tarp, and just spread the tarp down below the ladder and got a broom and just started lightly tapping the branches so that the acorns would fall on the ground. and they'd be on the tarp. So we'd know, okay, those ones haven't already been there. They just fell off the tree, and we'd collect those. And we also would just directly on some lower branches, lightly twist the acorn and separate it from the cap. And if you do that too early, what usually happens is the cap is still attached to the nut. When you pull the cap off, you're usually pulling a piece of that acorn off the top, and it will that creates a spot for insects and pests to get in and feed. And so, yeah, we collected weeks after the acorns first start to drop. So they first start to drop in around September or November. We don't want to collect those because odds are those are the acorns that the tree has found no reason to hang on to, and just drop them because it sees it as a waste of energy and doesn't think that those acorns will likely make it to the next step. So it just goes ahead and lets those go. So we don't collect those because likely they're not viable. So we kind of waited a bit longer and went to collect for many areas of the garden. And after we were done collecting, I mean, I think we hundreds of acorns throughout this whole thing, about 3 months of collecting, or 2 months, sorry. And once we finished the day, we would do a viability test. And the test that I chose was the sink or float test. And I also combined this test with pre-germination. So the sink or float test is fast, easy, and inexpensive. Were the 3 main reasons I wanted to do it. You just fill up a bowl or a bucket of water, sizable, big enough size for the acorns, and you dump them all in and stir them around for a bit, and then leave them for a couple hours and then come back. And the acorns that are sinking are the ones that we keep, but the ones that are floating we discard. And they're floating because they're damaged or hollow inside, so the density of the water carries them to the top. Before doing that sink or float test, though, we discard any acorns with sticky exudate or discolorations, because those have likely been damaged by insects. So conditions for germination, they need cool, moist conditions. If they dry out, they will die. The acorns won't make it. They won't grow any trees. And as well as a lot of gas exchange. So you want to keep the key is to keep it moist, but also plenty of room for oxygen and things like that to get in. So I stored, collection started in October, finished in mid-December. 8 collection days with volunteers and horticulture staff. We collected in areas of the Japanese garden, the lilac garden, the front drive installation that's rather new, as well as some in the rose garden and native garden in Layla's area. So yes, to store the viable seeds in plastic bags in the refrigerator. The plastic bag acted as a moisture barrier, keeping water and condensation inside the bag, but as well as I left them a little bit open at the top so that the gas exchange, which is so key, was still able to happen. And I've stored that, and it doesn't have to be perlite. As long as it's a well-drained material, everything should be fine. And then the seedlings started to see germination 2 weeks after sowing, and then, 2 weeks after sowing, and then the seedlings began pushing out from the soil from mid-December to not the present, this presentation, I should have corrected that. Probably into the middle of December, or January is when, or maybe February when they stopped. So there are the little seedlings you can see at different stages. This one right here is when they first start to push out. And then you can see right here, you've got some of the lower lateral leaves going, and then the ones in the back are a little further along. So the sowing depth, the acorn is to be planted on its side. The root and the shoot or the stem will both come out of the same area of the acorn, the tip. So that's why you plant it on its side, so that you're not kind of predetermining where it wants to go. It'll be able to make that decision. And then the sowing depth is 1 to 2 inches is kind of a rule of thumb, but if you do want to get scientific or mathematical formulaic about it, it's 1.5 times the diameter of the acorn. And when rodents are present, it's said to plant it a bit deeper just so the squirrels or rabbits or whatever is after the acorn won't be able to get to it as easily. So going back, it's important that with trees especially, that you plant them in a container that is more tall than it is wide, and that's to allow that the taproot to grow to the bottom as long as it can before it starts shooting leaves out the top. And then they require water every 2 to 3 weeks there. You don't want to overwater them. That will lead to root rot. You also don't want to overwater them because that is not the life that they will have for the rest. You don't want to coddle the seedling because it won't be as readily adapted to the climate if you kind of coddle it and don't give those promote root growth. So yep, seedlings.
Thank you for all that information.
Of course. And that's my email address if you have any questions or if you want to come talk to me in person. Of course, I think with a mask and social distance is best, but yes, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 3:30. And yes, email address, feel free to email me. I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Thank you, Davis.
Thank you.
And so next we're going to have our California native plant garden horticulturist, Layla Valenzuela. She's going to go ahead and share her screen and talk to us about the native garden at Descanso Gardens. So Layla.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and put my share screen on.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. So we all seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, I'm happy to be here talking to you guys about our native garden. Emmy had came to me and first off, I'm Layla. I've been here for 8.5 years. I'm in the native garden. I'm the native garden horticulturist. And I've always, when I started here, there really wasn't much known about the native garden. I was given a pack of pictures and a plant list, and it was like, okay, go ahead and work in the garden. I was like, all right. So I kind of had to, through the years, had to go find my way through and try to do the right things about the garden. So when
How long
Emmy asked me
ago
to,
was that, Layla?
I'm sorry?
How long ago was that?
I've been here a little over 8 years.
Oh, fantastic.
So I'm like one of the senior staff in the horticulture department. So when Amy came to me to ask about a presentation, I thought it'd be kind of fun to go through and go back and find history about the California native garden and speak a little bit about how it came about and go throughout the years and show where we're at now for our native garden. So that's what my presentation's on. We'll go ahead and get started. And this is kind of an interesting plant here. I don't know if you've ever seen that before. It's a California Dutchman's pipe, Aristolochia californica. It's a vine. So we'll be talking about the creation of the native garden, changes, events, challenges in the garden throughout the years, 2000 to present. And I put a little before and after show together. It could be pretty interesting. So I'll give you a brief history about Descanso Gardens to get us started. And one of the main reasons why we still have Descanso Gardens here is because of Manchester Bodie. He was a property owner here starting the late 1930s to about 1952. He was a newspaper guy and he did pretty well for himself. Was able to buy all this acreage. Before it was a rancho and it was called Rancho Descanso. And Descanso means rest for any of those who don't know. So Bodie lived here. He was really interested in horticulture. He grew his own camellias. He grew a camellia plantation. He had a lot of respect for the people in the field. He hired the people, they were really the stars of horticulture and were really experts about in the field. So he cultivated a camellia garden and also a rose garden. And in 1952, he decided to retire, moved down to San Diego, and he pretty much left his land to the county. And so the county LA County acquired it on a lease to buy program for a few years. And so within that time from 52, for a few years there, they weren't really sure what they wanted to do with Descanso Gardens. There was two oppositions. One wanted to just subsidize it, and sell it off for development. And we had a group of people who really saw the beauty in Descanso and really wanted to keep it and keep it as a botanical garden. So it was the board of supervisors were in charge of figuring out what to do about it. One of the bigger advocates was John Anson Ford. He was on one of the board of supervisors, and you may be familiar with that name. He has the John Anson Ford Amphitheater was named after him. He was an American journalist, and he was an ad exec, and he was a politician. And so he was a really big advocate of Descanso. So there was many in the community who were concerned about, the fate of Descanso. So he encouraged them to create a committee to encourage LA County to keep the property and open it as a botanical garden. So that's what happened. Descanso Garden Guild was formed, and they did convince LA County to keep the property and purchase it and turn it into a botanical garden. So at this time, sorry?
Thank you to the guild.
Oh, yes, of course. And we are still the Descanso Gardens Guild.
Yes.
Yeah. So at the time, they wanted to find something that would attract the public to the garden. And it essentially defined that role as a public botanical garden. So they decided to create a California native plant garden. And of course, at the time, Theodore Payne was very not only an advocate for native plants, but he was very well respected in the horticulture field in Southern California. He was actually an Englishman. He moved here in the late 1800s as a teenager, and one of his first jobs was working as a ranch hand at Madame Majeska's ranch in Anaheim. She was a very popular actress at the time. And as he started working on her ranch, he really fell in love with California native plants and didn't understand why everybody else was bringing all these other plants in to their gardens here in California. Why weren't they using native plants that essentially did really well here and belonged here? So throughout his career, he introduced over 500 species of native plants into the horticulture field and did many other things. So of course, this is who they hired to lead their development of the California Native Garden. And there was also a committee formed. So you can see on this plaque down here, this plaque is still here at Descanso Gardens, and it has all the members of the committee. And I always saw this plaque and I never knew who all these men were. I knew it was Theodore Payne, of course, but I was always curious about who these other men are. So I was given, throughout the years, I was given minute meetings of their meetings this committee had when they were trying to establish the garden. So as I went through there, I was finding out who all these men actually were. So Conrad Fantin, from what I understand, he was a chairman of the committee. He was really involved in the community. I'm not exactly sure what he did, but he was really like an advocate in La Cañada Flint Ridge. And I'm not sure if anybody knows anything else about him, but I'm sure he must be a lot about him. And Percy Everett was the superintendent at the Rancho Santa Ana Botanical Gardens, which is now the California Garden. They're an all native garden in Claremont. Arthur Barton was a landscape architect who was on the committee, and William Stewart was a director of Arborea and Botanic Gardens for the county of Los Angeles. And the last man here, John Therapeute, I totally butchered that. I haven't found any information on him yet, so I got a little dig deep more in there, but maybe he came on a little late in the committee. So all these men got together, and there's many notes of. They're very detailed in their note taking for their minutes. Is really interesting. All the stuff that they spoke about, to the cost of this plaque, to naming the structure that it's on, and they were really involved in getting the community together to help establish this garden, to get people to donate to the garden. There was a lot of public donations, and to also get corporations to be involved in donating.
And have you seen any discussions about water and how they were planning to bring the water to the gardens?
So actually Manchester Bodie bought the rights to a water well here.
Okay.
And it was a natural well. So he was really savvy that way. And for many years, we were all really reliable on our well water. But unfortunately, one of our main pipes broke a few years back. So we do no longer get to use that well water unless that is repaired, and it's a very huge repair, and it's on the city streets up the road from us. So maybe in the future we'll see, but
maybe somebody is going to be watching this video and be an opportunity for them to give us a light on how can we do this.
Definitely, that would help us out tremendously. So then, of course, that's Theodore Payne. That's a picture of him walking through here at the gardens. And he was in his late 80s at the time. So this is, I think, one of his last really big projects that he worked on. So the idea of the Native Garden was to promote native plants through demonstration and education. And let's see, so we have so the mission, the official mission, which I found in notes in the minutes, was to cause a revival of interest in California flora, to educate school children in native plants, and to create an area for formal study by home gardeners to enable them to have beauty and protection from elements in their gardens. And in protection, they meant erosion control if they lived on slopes, and fire escaping from around their homes. They also created a series of classes for the community, and they have notes on there that some of these classes, up to 200 people showed up for them. So I think the idea of creating this native garden and getting the public's interest really helped out their mission to create this garden. And a lot of the class titles were, it's almost what we speak about today, and how we promote native plants, like the beauty of native plants, or ecological reasons to use native plants. So that was kind of neat to find that out, that they're still teaching what they taught back then. So.
And these days, what do you need to do to join the guild?
The guild is, I'm not sure exactly how it's structured. We have a board here, and I think it's kind of more converted over into the board of directors who are all volunteers here and help with certain decisions made in the garden. So it's like we have our director here and us, and then we have them, and we're work together to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Layla. We're a nonprofit organization now, so we're a 501c3, and we do have a board of directors that, just like Layla described. Mm-hmm. But our nonprofit is named the Descanso Gardens Guild, and as she described, when it started, it was all volunteers. Correct. And now it's an recognized nonprofit with a board of directors.
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, so both entities work together. And so this is a picture of the plant list that I was given. I believe it was maybe put together by Theodore Payne. All of the installation of this garden was all volunteers back then. All the plants were donated. Theodore Payne donated over 1,000 plants. He it said his cost was about $10,000 out of his own pocket for this garden. We have Percy Everett, who donated many plants from Rancho Ana Botanical Gardens, and all of the road paving was done with donations, and the cost to Descanso Gardens was just $400. So this committee did a pretty good job of getting this garden started and paid for on its own. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so and this is Bodie and Theodore Payne together. And at first I saw this photo and I thought it was Walt Disney. It looks a lot like Walt Disney, but but it makes more sense that it's Bodie. And this here in the middle is is their plan for a commencement ceremony. And it's kind of fun. You could see all the who it's from. April 3rd, 1959. The people to invite on top of the list was Manchester Bodie. So they invited him to this commencement, which is really neat. And different horticultural groups and garden editors and the county. And you see all these people here. Mr. Frank Lanterman, who, you know, was a historical family here in La Cañada. And so it was a big deal. I think there may be other photos somewhere else of the actual event. I have to ask.
Yeah, the Lanterman House.
Yeah, the Lanterman House, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
California history, I love it. All right, so that was the, you know, in the 50s. That is 1959. The garden was established. It said that it was done pretty rapidly. So I imagine throughout the 60s, beginning of the 60s, the garden was planted, you know, they're watching everything grow. And then from there on, I have very little documentation about what happened between then and now. And most of this information that I have gotten was from this nice man here on our Case tractor. This is Louis Guitron. He actually worked here at Descanso Gardens for about 45 years. This was his first job and his last job. He lived here on the grounds. He raised a family here on the grounds, and he retired about 3 years ago. So we got a lot of our history about the gardens from Louis. And that's him there helping out. He loved to be on the big tractors and working that big.
His last name?
Guitron? Louis Guitron. Yeah. And so I like I said, I was curious to see what happened to this garden, because when I first started here, there really wasn't much in it. It was very overgrown and not a lot happened. So I always wondered, you know, what happened. So from what we understand, in the 70s, there was a big landslide, rushed through the gardens, covered a lot of it. They put a retaining wall in. In the 80s, there really wasn't much interest in native plants. So I think it wasn't as exciting anymore, this California native garden. In the 90s, I have found that they did rename the California native garden to the California garden, meaning that they were going to try to induce other plants that do okay in California to maybe spruce up the place and make it a little more interesting. And a desert garden was created. So I have a picture of this desert garden being created here. These pictures are from the 90s. I don't have exactly, this was in that pack of pictures that I was given. I don't have the dates, but that's my guesstimate there. So you can see you got some official landscaping horticulture staff here standing around a tiller. You'll see that today too. When I'm working this in, if you're familiar with the desert garden, we have an arbor over this bench now. It's very grown in. And then what I thought was kind of fun was, of course, they have field trips here already. They established this garden, and there you go. They have kids here working on experiments in the garden and what we do today. Wow. Yeah. So in the 2000s, from what I also understand from this oral history, is from 2000 to about 2011, there was only one gardener in the California native garden. Not sure how often he was in it or what happened in there, but you can see this picture here. This is pretty much how most of the garden looked. Just overgrown, a lot of older plants that needed to be pruned. Yeah, there wasn't too much happening. No pathways. Before I came on in 2013, there was one other garden in there for about a year and a half, and she made pathways so you can actually have some definition of where you were going in there. And a side note, I did work at the Theodore Payne Foundation. I was there for about 2.5 years, and it's about 2007 to about 2010. And never once did anybody mention Theodore Payne's native garden at Descanso Gardens. So it was almost like it was completely off the map. I knew nothing about it until I came here. So what happened in that time, from when I started, we did massive clearings in the garden. A lot of overgrown stuff, a lot of weeds, tried to find paths more, and really worked on plant funding. In 2017, a new design. it was kind of hard to get funding for our native garden when we didn't have a plan in place. So we really needed to have a blueprint and a whole landscape design. So then we can go to people and say, hey, we want to do this to our garden. Give us money, please, to do it. Because we do work off a lot of grants here at Botanical Gardens. So that really helped out. There was never any other design that I've found in the records that showed any design of the native garden when it was placed in 1959, just a plant list. So it's kind of neat to have a new design. And then you got a design and plant grants equals success. So this is our new design plan. I was done by Form LA. And what an interesting side note is Cassie Aogi. She is, I hope I'm not saying her name wrong. She does own this design firm, but she was also on the board of directors at the Paint Foundation when she did this. So it was a nice little, full circle to where someone from his organization actually helped redesign this garden. Some of it's in place. She used some of our existing plantings that I kind of put in when I started and worked around it. So a lot of it's not going to be done exactly the way it is, but it's it's a suggestion just so we can get a plan in place. And sorry, this is very primitive writing here, but I didn't have a digital form on me to put this in. So on your, you'll see the Form LA to the right, let's say it's your left to your right is highlighted. This is what has been completed since we got this design. So within about 3 to 4 years, we've completed almost, that almost looks like 2/3 of it. What's left over is a lot of steep terrain along the outsides here. This will be very interesting to actually redo. It'll be a lot of work. And this is mostly an oak area, open area, these two areas too. And then we got our desert garden here. And then this is a completely overgrown area. So we'll revisit that sometime. So I got some fun before and after photos. This photo to your, I think it's your left, but the one with no hardly any plants, that was the El Portal structure that was first built when they started the garden. So you can see this is all newly planted garden here. And this is it now. I took this photo today. So what a huge difference. These, how many years make? 60 years make. So that's kind of fun to see. Another before and after photo. I tried to take a photo from the same spots. So this is overlooking the garden. And this is now what you see. Very, very big difference from the 60s, 50s and 60s. This is Theodore Payne sitting on a rock, admiring his work. And this is the rock. So what a difference, right?
What a big difference.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe I should clear this out here and we can have like a selfie shot and you can take a photo of you posing like Theodore Payne here on his rock.
Maybe we can get a plaque donated that says Theodore Payne.
Yes, absolutely. I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And so here's a picture I found from the 1990s and a little what it looks like today. I'll go through quicker and run out of time. This is 2013 when I started. This was last year. So you can see there's been a lot added. Many, many differences.
Gorgeous. And taking care of.
Yes, and taking care. A little TLC in there.
Yes.
So here, another area. This was replanted 2 years ago. That's our middle section. This is El Portal area too. It was just a few weeds there and a little footbridge. Now we got full planting. We got a new bridge in done by Boy Scouts. So that's kind of nice. Same area. Sorry, it's a little blurry, but this is when it was first planted, 2018, and this is what it looks like, fully grown in, almost too much. Another area. This was 2018, and this was all done from the design and grants to get these plants. We got grants to this from the Metropolitan Water District and some other, Stanley Smith, I believe. And then that's it. Come and visit us. Everything's going to be blooming, crazy bloom right now. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Leila.
Thank you, Layla.
You're welcome.
All right, and then we can't leave without learning about the wildlife that is
Okay.
in these places. So Deborah.
Okay, let me get my screen up here for you. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about the wildlife in the gardens. I'm a volunteer at the gardens. I volunteered now for 11 years. I'm part of the education program and the horticultural program as well, although I never get my hands dirty. I do other things in horticulture. So what we have here is a botanical garden that most people understand, but what we also have here is a habitat for many different kinds of wildlife. We're a migratory path for birds, and we are also part of the wildlife corridor, which runs from the Arroyo in Pasadena all the way down to the Santa Monica Mountains. We become a home for habitat for a number of different wildlife creatures. And the first one that you might see when you walk into the gardens is the mallard duck. Not a day goes by when you can't find a duck. Everybody knows the mallard by the male's green iridescent head and these black feathered tail feathers, as a great blue patch on its side. The female, not quite as showy. She's brown and speckled with a grayish head, but she too has a tiny little blue patch on her side if you look at her closely. They are called dabbling ducks. And I guess dabbling is a technical term, okay, where the duck will stick its head under the water, leave its little tail up in the air, and paddle its feet around so that it can maintain that balance. And what they're doing is collecting food off the bottom of the ponds and the streams, aquatic plants and small fish and insects that live down there. We have another kind of duck in our gardens, okay, that is called a hooded merganser. And the hooded merganser are migratory, so they're not here all year long, but they show up periodically. They have this great crest on their head, which is sort of like a mohawk. We can see that the male has a black face with a white crest there and great black and white stripes down its back. We can see the female, again, not quite as showy, but she still has a crested head and she has some black and white stripes down her back. And you can see that their bills are pointed as opposed to a normal kind of duck bill that you might think of. The merganser is called a diving duck. This duck will go completely underwater for 5 to 7 seconds, I've counted, and then come up with a crayfish or a fish in its mouth. It'll sort of beat that poor fish to death. And then eventually it will just raise its head and open its bill and slide the creature down its throat all in one gulp. They're not easy to spot sometimes, but again, if you see a flashy white crest, you know you're looking at a merganser. We then have, okay, we have to get the merganser off of there. We then have several different kinds of herons I want to introduce you to. The first is a green heron. You can see this great slick back of green feathers and then black and green feathers on its back, some colorful stripes on its chest or breast. Another bird, another fowl that has a very different kind of duck beak than what you would think for a waterfowl, pointed. This is a very stubby little bird, okay, walks up and down the streams and stabs at the fish and the insects that are underneath the leaves and the debris. A different kind of heron is called the blue heron. Notice the difference in size and shape. Very tall, very thin, very elegant. It's got an orange bill with a little white on its throat and chest. Will stand for hours. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but will stand for a long time waiting for fish to swim by and will swoop in and pick that fish up with its bill and take it off to eat it. We also find this blue heron wading through our streams and stabbing at the fish as well in order to pick them up. And I've watched them be able to pick up a fish and take it up into the trees and then again, open its bill and let it slide down its throat. I guess it's quite, an efficient way of eating. Let's see what else. We have two other kinds of herons. We have the snowy egret, which is a small white heron. It's so noticeable. As soon as you see a flash of white, you're going to see a heron. They have a long, thin black bill with a little yellow under the eyes. And this is my favorite part about the heron, is its feet. When you see its feet come out of the water, you'll see that they're this great yellow color. And it's I don't know, I just love it. This is one thing I like about this bird. Their going through the pond and they are stirring up the dirt and the mud in order for insects and fish to come to the surface. So again, they can use that sharp bill in order to stab at what they want to get into their mouth. We then have one more heron to look at, and this is called the great white heron. You can see the body shape is different. It's tall and elegant. And when it stands in the pond, you get this great reflection. So it's a nice sort of photographic opportunity. But this heron will also go up into the trees and it will perch on a limb on one leg, okay? And it pulls its body in and sort of puffs itself out and even reduces its neck. You can see that it is just there, still as can be, again, waiting to find prey. There's a lake below it. And so the bill, again, is long and pointy. And one of the things I wanted to show you was the contrast of these two herons together. Here's the great heron, here's the small white heron. I've never seen them pal around together in the gardens in the 10 years that I've been here. I always see them separately, but this year, for some reason, they're together all the time. And I hope you just notice that wingspan. It can be 29 inches once it's spread out. So these two heron are always hanging about in the ponds and the lakes that we have in our gardens. We also have, coming up, let's go, there we go, the geese. They are in our gardens today as we speak. They visit us from February to July. They are Canada geese. The male and the female have exactly the same markings. The only way you can tell the difference is by their size. Here they are in a sort of a picture perfect situation with flowers and petals and everything floating through the stream, and they make a wonderful, wonderful addition to our gardens. When they come here, they are looking for a nesting place. We can have them nest anywhere, including on top of a shed. Okay, they build a scoop nest where they just move the twigs and the leaves aside, and they build like a tire for themselves, and they sit in it. And she is there nesting. This picture was from March of last year, just before we had to do a shutdown. I was also able to find another nest that was on the other side of a fence, and the goose was nice enough to get up for a minute to stretch her legs, and I was able to get a shot of the 2 eggs that she had laid. And here we see the little goslings. These are probably just a few days old. And once they are born, they stick to the adult geese like glue. There's barely an inch between them sometimes. And the adult geese are very, very protective of the goslings. In this particular little video that I was able to take, you see that they follow their mother or father around. They stay very close. These guys are about 6 weeks old by now. They do grow rather quickly, and they model the behavior of the adults. In this video in particular, you'll see that these little guys are grooming themselves, right? And they're grooming themselves in a very particular manner because they are mimicking exactly what the adult geese do. And you can see this time and time again in the gardens where the adult geese will do one thing and the tiny little goslings will mimic them. And they're starting to get those wings in shape. They'll grow very quickly. And once they reach 10 to 12 weeks of age, they will fly away to wherever they go to for the winter and stay with their parents for another year before they're off on their own. Okay, turtles. Okay, if you've ever been to Petco, you've seen a red-eared slider, or maybe you've seen them in your children's rooms. What we have here are an adult that is getting ready to lay her eggs. The darker the shell, the older the turtle. You can see the red slash on the cheek just behind the eye. These turtles will come up onto the land, find a very soft patch of dirt, and they'll scoop away at it, and then she can lay anywhere from 3 to 30 eggs. She'll then cover them up with more dirt and some debris from the garden, and she'll walk away and leave them. And once they hatch, they have to find their way into water before a predator gets a hold of them, which is the sad life of a turtle. They're very social. They'll gather on our rocks and they'll sit in the sun for as long as they can. That's how they need to get warm. And then they'll swim off and they'll hang out at the bottom of the ponds for the evening and then come back in the morning. And every once in a while, just like us, a turtle needs a spa day. So they come and do a little turtle yoga and put some mud on their backs and they soak up that sun. We also have lizards. You've probably seen the western fence lizard in your neighborhood, your garden, on your walls. They're very short lizards, okay, compared to this one that I'll talk about in a minute. They have a blunt face. They're sort of grayish green in color. They have a blue belly, and so when they do that little push-up move that they have, you can see this blue flash from their belly. This is an alligator lizard, okay, and it's called that because unfortunately we can't see its face, but it's got a long snout, and it's like an alligator, and when it opens its mouth, you see these very jagged, sharp teeth. It's a rather aggressive lizard, great stripes down its back. From the tip of its nose to its tail, it's 7 to 9 inches long, and its tail is another 7 to 9 inches long, much bigger than the western fence lizard. But they do have two things in common. They both eat bugs, okay, and they both detach their tail when they fear that they are being threatened, and then they can grow that tail back. Squirrels, okay, we have the western gray squirrel, which we commonly call the tree squirrel. You can see how its tail is upright, very fluffy. You won't see that tail dragging on the ground ever. And this is doing what a squirrel does best, and that's collecting acorns from the ground and eating them. It's called a tree squirrel for the obvious reason that it lives in the trees. If you look up into our oak trees or oak trees in your neighborhood, and you see this massive sort of messy collection of twigs and branches and bark, you've got a tree squirrel and you've got a nest. They build them like a little condo. There's all sorts of rooms and compartments in here where they will nest with their babies, they'll feed their babies, they'll sleep at night, they'll have one for their waste material. So they have a number of different compartments in there that they make use of throughout the day. And then they hide up there in the evening and come back down in the morning in order to collect food. They will do what they do best, and that is sit in an oak tree and munch away on acorns, and then scatter up, take them up into their nests. And this is how they spend their day. And sorry, Davis, that you have to see this, because we also have our squirrels come and eat our magnolias.
Those are
They
his
do.
favorites.
Yes.
Those are his favorites.
They do like our magnolias, both the buds and the blossoms. So sometimes when we don't have enough acorns for them, this is what they do.
Eat the magnolia.
So yeah, he's just having a good old time. Then we have the ground squirrel, okay? Very different from the tree squirrel. Looks almost like a chipmunk, not a chipmunk. Yeah, looks almost like a chipmunk. It's got a blunt face. Notice its tail. It's just long and thin and will fall out from the back. It never stands up straight. Oops, I'm sorry, I gave that one away. How do I get back? They like to come out in the sun, and they sit on the walls, and they will roll around in the dirt and get covered with dirt and dust. It must be some sort of a warming mechanism. They don't climb trees, but they will jump into a tree every once in a while to get at the leaves and the buds. They live on the ground, as their name indicates. They build these huge compounds in earth embankments. This can go back 4 feet or down 4 feet, depending on how they're building. And you see these little escape hatches, okay? So they can come in and out and fool their predators as to which way they're going. They also live on acorns, and I've never seen them mixed together. They're not social creatures with the tree squirrels, but they do go after the same food. So here we go, the mule deer, one of our best attractions in the garden, called a mule deer because of those huge ears that it has, like a mule. You can see them come down in the gardens very slowly, very quietly, and this one is eating acorns. It will just go around. It will sometimes take acorns from the tree if they're low enough, but mostly it has to rely on what falls to the ground. And it just scoops them up and eats them, shell and all. And this was a rare find for me one day, and I was so happy to get it. It's a buck. And we don't see the bucks come down into the gardens all that often. Usually we have the does and the fawns, but this one came down one morning, and I captured it as best I can on my camera. People think we have white-tailed deer, but we don't. This is a white patch on its backside, but you can see that its tail is actually black. Again, the next set of slides I'll show you, it will tell you why it's a mule deer. Come on. You can see those ears. They twitch side to side, and they can twitch independently of one another, and their eyes are on the sides of their heads as well. This is to help them see what's going on, so that if they feel that they're in danger, they can pick up the sounds and see the movement and move quickly, 29 miles per hour. And they can jump all 4 feet off the ground at the same time. This is nice to see. They come in and they will lay in the garden and just be at peace. They're not terribly afraid of people unless you do a sudden movement or make a sudden noise. And here again, sorry to our horticulturists who take care of our plants, but this little fawn came down to eat the roses one morning. And they do that frequently. And I have to say, visitors love it. Horticulturists and gardeners don't. But that is the nature of these animals. So that's a little bit about our wildlife in the gardens. I hope you come and see more. And again, I know you come for the blooms, but I want you to stay for the wildlife. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And thank you again, everyone, for having us. And we hope you are gonna be enticed to come and visit Descanso and enjoy the oaks and the California garden and the wildlife. And I'll turn it back over to you for all your any other business you have.
Thank you, Emmy, and thank you all, Layla and Davis. Sorry, Davis, about the magnolias. Deborah, Charlie Bartel, and Emmy Yoshimura, thank you so much for this lovely presentation. I am certain as the weather is warming up and we are jumping into the orange level of safety protocols, our community members are out and about, and but I am certain that when we share this video, they're going to be blown away with all the work that it takes for Descanso Gardens to look the way it looks, and for all the information, really, it's in our community, and we should all make it a point to contribute, either volunteering or making a donation to the guild. And we are hoping, we have so many celebrities that live in La Cañada, Flintridge. So we are hoping that they are going to take on some of the points that need to be, that we need to help with for the gardens to continue to thrive. So thank you all for the history. It was amazing. And we have here Claudia Forbes, Norma Maurer, and our latest, we have Ronald Naka. So Ronald, you have joined a little later into the presentation, but nonetheless, you are welcome. And if you can unmute yourself, that would be lovely. Otherwise, Claudia, what did you think about the presentation from Descanso Gardens today?
Fabulous. I know a lot about the gardens, but it's always nice to, every time I hear a presentation, I always pick up little bits and pieces, more information that I didn't know about. I've actually been coming to Descanso, you won't believe this, 60 years.
Wow.
So, but it was really excellent. Thanks to all the people that presented today.
Yes, thank you for your support to the gardens. And Norma, if you are, can you unmute yourself, if you may, and share with us what was your first part of the presentation? I don't think she can hear us. And Ronald, are you still here with us? Well, we don't have Ronald to be able to answer, but Claudia, I was going to ask you, when you visit, so you come to the gardens and you pay for a ticket, or are you a member of the gardens, or how do you do that?
we've been members for years, and I also volunteer in horticulture 2 days a week.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for the service. We all appreciate it.
Will the tape of this talk today be made available for people to view later?
Yes, it will be available. We are going to create a link for it, and we are going to share it. And all you need to do is stay tuned with what the Montrose Chamber is going to do to share it. In which way, if you're going to share it on Instagram or Facebook, or on both, or if it's going to be sent out via link, via email, for a link to be, so that you can click on it and be able to watch.
Because I'd really like to be able to share with people.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for helping. Too bad Norma is not. Are you here, Norma? Hello? Norma, can you hear me? Or Ronald? Well, let me see if we can send them a message. We cannot hear you, Norma. We hear that you are trying to communicate. Maybe you can communicate through the chat. Hello, Norma? Sorry, we cannot hear Norma or Ronald. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here today, and especially to the Descanso Gardens team. We appreciate all the information, as I said earlier, and we are going to stay in touch, and we will be sending you this recording we have for today. We wish that you can join us again soon, and we will keep in touch. Claudia, since you have been helping so much at the gardens, and you have been a volunteer, and we would like to award you with a token of our appreciation today. So you are going to get, as a thank you, from La Cañada Flintridge community and from Montrose community, you are getting a dual membership for Descanso Gardens. And we hope you continue to enjoy it.
Thank
and
you.
Continue to volunteer.
I plan on it, and thank you very much. That's very generous of you.
It is our pleasure, and you were our the first person to join today, so you deserve a double. Thank you, everyone, and we hope to see you soon. We will look into ways to get more involved with the gardens and to continue on our mission to plant more California gardens.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining.
Yes, thank you for inviting us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Great information.